Well, the first one here that we want to take a look at here is the problem of mind. Now, you might say, what do you mean the problem of mind? I don't have a problem with my mind. Do you have a problem with your So he says, let's talk about another problem, the problem of mind. Well, remember, we're dealing with, he says, a materialistic atheist. Does the materialistic atheist think that I have a mind or that he has a mind? Can he, if he is consistent, hold that he has a mind, right? People often interchange the words mind and brain, but Bonson wants to suggest that there is a difference between mind and brain, right? So does what you think, for instance, in your mind boil down to what takes place in your brain, right? He's asking not if there's any relationship at all. Clearly there's a relationship, but he's asking if it can be reduced. That is, what takes place in your mind can be reduced to what happens in your brain. And he's going to suggest, no, it can't, right?
Right. So maybe a little harder concept here, because this may be something that you've not really thought about. Like, okay, yes, I have a brain, but then I'm thinking. Okay, so thinking, there's synapses firing, but hold on, what's the I part of that? I am thinking that there's a sense of individuality there. Why don't I think as a collective, a Borg-like collective?
Yeah, why don't you say we're thinking?
Yeah.
Well, all of us are thinking.
Right. Ayn Rand, one of her first novels, Anthem, talks about individual that learns the word I and doesn't refer to themselves any longer as we, themselves, and then the number that they were assigned. And so, why do we have this concept of kind of singularity and thinking about things? And it's not just personality. This is the way that I am, and you have to take me or leave me at my best. But this concept of mind is something that is talked about immensely within the school of philosophy. So is it even theoretically possible for a scientist to open my cranium, pop it open, and do a complicated procedure on the gray matter that is there, root around there in the stick, and says, you were thinking of the Star-Spangled Banner just a moment ago, weren't you? No, it isn't, because we're talking about two different things of a different order altogether. The electrons and the molecules and the synapses and all that in the brain have nothing to do with the concept of being transmitted over those synapses and arcs and so forth. You cannot tell.
So the physical processes, right, is the point, is different than the mental aboutness, intentionality of what the brain, what we're thinking about, right? That's the point he's trying to make. The physical processes and the mental processes are two different things.
Yeah, we can kind of think about this when we're talking about, okay, well, you divide space up into atoms and then protons, electrons, and then, well, what makes those up? Quarks. And so it's really hard to do this within the brain, because you get to synapses and it's just like, well, okay, is my consciousness just carried along by electricity? And then what part of the electricity is it carried by? And who's there and what's there? And how does that electricity of me thinking of an elephant go from the left side of my brain to the right side of my brain? So I see the drawing and then I picture the concepts of, I remember that one time when I was 6 years old at a zoo when I rode an elephant. So are those just the physicality of it, and there's nothing kind of underlying the surface of that? And it seems to have we have a concept of this where it's more than just the physical gray matter in your head. There's more to it than that. So you cannot tell what a person is thinking by dissecting the person's brain. You're not thinking of an elephant and all of a sudden within the confines of your mind, here comes the elephant picture that's imprinted on your brain, and someone can kind of take a X-ray scan and say, oh, you're thinking of an elephant. There's a difference between mind and brain.
Yeah, that's the point he's trying to make. He says, it's the atheist has to say that the mind reduces to the brain, because the brain is the physical portion, and that's all the materialistic atheist has to work with. Right? The brain then is the mind, I guess is what they would have to say, he's saying. And so, you don't have any thinking processes that is part of your free investigation and choosing. You just have what takes place on the electrochemical responses in the gray matter upstairs. And this is the implication of his materialism. There's nothing over and above the physical processes that are happening in the brain. There is no free investigation. There is no choosing. They're just electrochemical processes, synapses firing, and that sort of thing in certain patterns. And that's all you have. There is no mind. There is no mental thing.
Right.
He says, but if this is true, then you don't have control over what you think, right? I mean, how can I control what I think if it's just a physical process that's happening? In fact, you made the point, if I don't have control over it, I don't even exist, right? It's just a physical process. And so where is the I?
Right. Exactly. And this is why we read sci-fi. This is why things like if you want to watch the movie version of I, Robot, there exists that. But you're watching Star Wars, and C-3PO gets his head bonked on the hull of the Millennium Falcon. And he says, "Ouch." Who's saying that? Why is he saying that? Why is this protocol droid mimicking humanity? Or do droids have souls? It seems like in the Star Wars universe, with the idea of the Force and stuff like that, the idea of a non-physical entity that even inhabits metal, like C-3PO and R2-D2, seem to be more there, and the thinking process of these droids are personal. And granted, yes, this is entirely a work of fiction, but what that fiction has informed us is, okay, well, what is humanity then? And so some of your best ideas of sci-fi explore what is reality now, and what is it that make humans the humans that they are, and you just put them in different stories. And so I would refer to you to the episode that Katie Room and I talked about sci-fi. More so, I talked at Katie for what sci-fi is, and so but we talked about why sci-fi and fantasy are so important, and how it needs to ground itself within the scope of reality, because we're not writing for the future people, we're writing for us these days. And so looking at the stories that we read about, this is a fundamental story that early science fiction has always written about.
Yeah, good. So notice that the movie wasn't called The Robot; it was called I, Robot, right? Which is the idea that the robot somehow developed consciousness and became an I, and not just the robot, right? And so that's the idea here. Where the consciousness come from, and what is consciousness and mentality and those types of things.
Right. So he says that, in fact, some atheists would say, yes, you're absolutely right. You don't have a mind. You're just a brain, and brain and mind are interchangeable. And you're just getting so super fancy because all you've done is you've watched Star Wars 82 times and you enjoy it. So what you think is just the result of antecedent physical causes, and that's it. Well, you can run with that and let them state their worldview and say, okay, where does this take us? If that's true, there's no mind, and everything I think is reduced to electrochemical responses in the brain. It's just popping fizz. It's just stardust bumping into other stardust. That's all it is. And your happiness is just a chemical reaction that can be mitigated with other types of chemicals that can always keep you happy. I couldn't prove, though. I couldn't. This is what I think. I didn't choose to think it. I couldn't prove what I'm thinking to be true because I can't help the electrochemical responses to take place in my brain. That's what would be the response to it. What I think, I didn't choose to think. It's just happening. It's happening to me. It's the cause of just those things happening. I couldn't prove to think what I'm thinking is true. It's just the very fact that it is. It's not because of it. It's just an is. And the responses that take place in my brain are not to me as a person, me. So when I go out and kill somebody, well, that's just my electrochemical responses doing that thing. it's not me as a person. The brain inside me just told me to do it, and I'm just
the brain
following
made
along
me
with
did
it.
it.
But yeah, the body wants to divorce itself from that brain, but unfortunately, that brain has its tendrils everywhere.
And so Watson says, in other words, you say to the atheist, if what you say is true, then you have no reason for believing it to be true. Your worldview undermines any confidence that you could possibly have in your own worldview. Because on your worldview, everything that you're saying about atheism is just a result of electrochemical responses in your brain, right? That's it. You don't have any control, so it's just an electrochemical responses. Even the arguments that you're attempting to make are just electrochemical processes, right? And so you don't have any reason to believe those. He says, for all we know, the machinery upstairs in your head just went wacko, right? And so we won't hold you responsible. You just couldn't help saying that.
Right.
In fact, no one can help what they think if this is the case, and what they say and what they do, because there's no mind, there's no freedom, there's no choosing about what happens. It's just running a particular process, and you get what you get, and you have no control. Right? Right. Out of control brain, look out.
So he says, here's what he's getting at. If that all atheism is true, there could be no reason to believe atheism is true. Because if atheism is true, then I have no mind. My brain just does what it does, and his brain does what his does, and that's it. So
that's the story.
Yeah, we're just carried along, and so we're having a discussion: does God exist, or yes, God exists? Well, no, I don't think. Well, hold on. We're interacting with as two brains. We're meeting. Let's just go our own way. We don't know anything about anything, and even that being a true statement is also incorrect. Let's just fizz somewhere else so that we're not fizzing together, and our chemical imbalances can occur, and so we're just going to depart from that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. What a sad situation, right? And so the point here is that atheistic materialism eliminates our mind, right? And therefore eliminates our control on anything that we say or do. And it's self-defeating, because if I don't have any control, if I'm not making choices, if it's just chemical reactions that are happening, then how do I know what my argument is for atheism is true? How do I know that that's true, right? That's the problem of the mind that he wants to force on the atheists here, to force them to be confronted with it so that they see, how bankrupt this particular position is.